Once our children left home, my wife returned to her professional pursuits. That was the moment when everything began to unfold. Greetings and welcome. Delight in the offerings, join our community, and activate alerts. Emma Bennett sensed the heavy stillness around her, the house that once echoed with laughter, spirited debates over the TV volume, the rhythmic clatter of pots and pans, and the sharp sound of doors slamming now felt overwhelmingly spacious for her and Thomas Cross. The children had embarked on their separate journeys, each with new residences, careers, and aspirations. Lauren endeavored to feel joy for them, yet a quiet void within her began to deepen. For years, she devoted herself to motherhood, nurturing the home and upholding the family's foundation through countless small, daily acts of care. Yet now, each nook of that house reverberated with emptiness. Thomas Cross, ever the diligent one, continued with his business travels. Nearly every week, he would embark on a journey to a new destination. He dispatched brief notes, informing her of his meetings and that he would be back in 2 or 3 days. At times, he would neglect to make that evening call. Lauren grasped the reality. It was, after all, his perpetual pattern. Yet what once flowed with ease now seemed to stretch into an expanse of separation. Each message, laden with commonplace phrases, echoed a poignant reminder that, at this juncture in her life, she appeared to be relegated to a secondary role. On an unremarkable Saturday, she made the choice to become a volunteer at the local library. She longed to escape the confines of her home, to encounter familiar faces, to listen to the symphony of voices, to embrace a sense of purpose. Initially, she meticulously arranged the shelves, affixed labels to the books, and extended her assistance to those readers still in search of direction. She began to engage in conversation with one of the regular patrons, Noah Stone. He was roughly 15 years her junior. Perpetually cheerful, courteous, and brimming with inquiries about classic literature and vintage films, he appeared truly engaged in Lauren's words. Initially, she regarded it with a sense of amusement. In that moment, anticipation began to blossom within her for the moments he typically graced her presence. It began to shatter the dull routine of everyday life. The dialogue started to spill over from the confines of the library counter. To begin, a coffee at a nearby cafe. Next, a brief stroll to the square awaits. Lauren observed that her laughter blossomed in his presence. She experienced a sense of buoyancy. In Colin's gaze, she glimpsed a reflection of a past self, one that shimmered with vitality, brimming with enthusiasm, and possessed an insatiable thirst for existence. As he gently brushed his fingers against her hand for the first time, discussing a cherished passage from a beloved book, Lauren remained still, not withdrawing. She feigned surprise, yet allowed the touch to linger just a moment longer than required. The initial exchange of lingering glances and gentle caresses gradually evolved into clandestine rendezvous. Colin brimmed with enthusiasm, acted on impulse, and overflowed with creativity. Lauren plunged into it, as though she were gasping for air after an extended immersion beneath the surface. A heavy sense of guilt lingered in the air, a considerable amount of it. Yet, there lingered an insatiable yearning to be craved, to be etched in memory, to be acknowledged. Colin understood precisely how to nurture that. He praised her beauty, admired her intellect, and expressed his fortune in being with such a resilient and accomplished woman. Words that had long faded from her memory, she began to adorn herself with greater care. She applied perfume before stepping out, selected her attire with newfound deliberation, and styled her hair with a meticulousness she had long neglected. Thomas Cross remained blissfully unaware. He continued to arrive and depart, his rolling suitcase trailing behind him, accompanied by the weight of reports clutched in his hands. When he inquired about her well-being, it felt as though he was merely performing a routine gesture. In those fleeting moments, Lauren sensed an increasing chasm between herself and him, while an undeniable closeness to Colin began to blossom. Yet, even within the embrace of Colin, the insidious weight of betrayal started to seep in. It was not due to the emotions she harbored for Colin, which were but a passing whim, but rather the weight of deceit that pressed upon her heart. knowing she had constructed a life with a man who deserved her honesty. Colin, in contrast, perceived no issue in persisting. He yearned for something greater. He yearned to flee to the coast with her for a weekend, eager to delve into the depths of her being. Lauren steered clear of it. She expressed a desire to proceed with caution, indicating that she wasn't prepared for significant transformations. In reality, she found herself unable to envision a future within it. She began to understand that Colin was merely a mirror of her solitude, rather than a genuine bond. She was starting to realize that rather than alleviating her solitude, she had forged a new void, one even more profound, a chasm that intertwined delight with remorse, liberation with trepidation. Despite everything, she found herself unable to cease. Each time she contemplated bringing it all to a close, she discovered a yearning for yet another encounter, another pretext, another fleeting instant to escape the weight of reality. A sudden urge propelled her onward, despite the rational voice within her urging retreat. In the fragmented dance between her desires and the truths she understood, Lauren found herself adrift. She believed she held the reins of her destiny. She believed she had the power to cease at her discretion. She believed that Thomas Cross would remain oblivious forever, she pondered. That morning, Lauren awoke with an unusual sensation lingering in the air. She had resolved the previous night that she would bring everything with Colin to a close. She felt hollow within, as though a fragment of her essence was gradually being worn away. She came to understand that she had ventured beyond a boundary, one from which she questioned her ability to return. Moreover, she sensed that she was beginning to slip away from her own grasp, and her thoughts. She believed that a simple conversation with Colin, accompanied by an apology, would suffice to restore everything to its former state of normalcy. She meticulously crafted each sentence in her mind, carefully selecting the precise words, considering how to cushion the impact. Yet, unbeknownst to her, as she practiced her farewell, the stage had already been rearranged by another's hand. A.S. Thomas Cross returned home unexpectedly from his trip. A chill coursed through Lauren's body, leaving her momentarily paralyzed. He stood at the threshold, his face an impassive mask, and entered the room in silence. He set his bag down in the corner and made his way directly to her, who was busy in the kitchen. She attempted to smile, yet the expression withered the moment her gaze met his eyes. Something felt distinct in that moment, as though he possessed an unspoken understanding. And truly, he retrieved his phone from his pocket, swiftly unlocked the screen, and extended it toward her, bypassing any preamble. Before she even dared to glance, Lauren's hand began to tremble. As she gazed down, it felt as though the earth itself was crumbling away beneath her. The images existed, vivid and undeniable. Concise clips, vivid images. All things, soft caresses, tender embraces, and secrets shared in hushed tones, forever captured in time. Captured within the confines of their own home. The intricacies she believed she had mastered, the caution she thought she had exercised, unraveled before the undeniable evidence of her actions. Lauren withdrew, her hand shielding her face. She attempted to speak, yet her voice betrayed her. Thomas Cross held his silence for a few lingering seconds, his gaze fixed intently upon her. As he spoke, his voice resonated with a low, steady timbre, imbued with a palpable sense of fatigue. He expressed a desire to forego explanations at that moment. Just as she was about to press him further, he pivoted on his heel and strode out the door, leaving no hint of his destination. She remained there, immobilized, grappling with the bewildering reality of how swiftly everything had unraveled. She could never have fathomed that he would take such a drastic step. It was beyond her imagination that Thomas Cross, with his meticulous nature and quiet demeanor, would ever consider such a course of action. The installation of cameras, the quietude maintained during observation, the careful selection of the precise moment for confrontation, each detail suggested that he had been grappling with this situation for quite a while. Lauren felt a wave of foolishness wash over her as she realized the futility of trying to conceal anything from this man. It seemed that, in some way, he had anticipated her misstep. It was as though he had an innate understanding of her suffering, biding his time for her to affirm it. The hours that followed became a haze. Lauren remained seated on the couch, enveloped in a profound sense of disbelief. The phone on the table vibrated intermittently, yet she chose not to respond. She struggled to recall the moment when everything began to unravel. She reminisced about the day she encountered Colin, the initial touch, the first deception. She reminisced about the moments spent with Thomas Cross, cloaking her thoughts in a veil of normalcy. In an instant, memories surged forth in vivid bursts, reminiscent of fragments from a detonation she had ignited herself. Throughout the night, sleep eluded her. She traversed the expanse of the house. She pulled open drawers, gazed at faded photographs, sifted through Thomas Cross's coats draped in the closet, as though this would soothe her restless spirit. She recalled the first anniversary they celebrated together, the journey they embarked on to the countryside when the children were still small, the moment he returned home with flowers simply because he noticed her sadness. All those memories now sting like molten metal. For they arrived, each one bearing the undeniable truth that she had ignited it all on a mere impulse. 2 days slipped away. He never returned. Lauren pondered whether he found himself in a hotel, at a friend's abode, or perhaps meandering without purpose on the road. With each sound of a car gliding past on the street, she hurried to the window, anticipation dancing in her heart. She brewed the coffee with the same familiarity, dusted the furniture, and arranged his belongings, as though the rhythm of her actions might somehow summon him home once more. With every sunset that passed without a trace of Thomas Cross, she found herself descending further into a quiet despair that weighed heavily upon her soul. On the third day, Lauren dialed his number and recorded a voicemail, the initial one. She expressed her regret, conveyed her desire for a conversation, admitted her fault, acknowledged that she deserved the consequences, yet still felt the need to reach out to him. Then she composed a text message, and yet another, and yet another. Silence lingers. He seemed to have vanished into thin air. She found herself pondering whether he would ever return. Her mind spiraled into a tempest of dread, conjuring images of divorce, the children discovering the betrayal, and the unbearable shame of confronting her own family. The anguish was twofold: the loss of the man she cherished, and the stark realization of how far she had strayed from the person she once was. Lauren came to realize that the betrayal extended beyond just Thomas Cross. She had turned against her own essence, and coming to that understanding, within the quiet confines of her own home, felt akin to experiencing the same wound repeatedly, day after day. Those 3 days stretched on, resembling an eternity. Lauren found herself adrift in a haze, uncertain if it was morning or afternoon, if she had consumed a meal or merely sipped coffee, and whether the creaking of the gate was a tangible sound or merely a figment of her anxious mind. Whenever she believed she detected footsteps at the entrance, she would approach the door and remain there, utterly still. Despite her constant reassurances to herself, her stomach plummeted each time it wasn't Thomas Cross who appeared. Her heart remained in a state of perpetual vigilance, while her eyes ached from the relentless gaze fixed upon the phone, anticipating a message that would never come. She had shattered the most solid ground beneath her, and now she faced the emptiness that lingered in its wake. In his absence, the memories of Thomas Cross took on a striking clarity, each moment etched more deeply in the mind. The laughter we shared, the playful banter, the way he meticulously straightened his collar before heading off to work, each wound transformed into tiny lacerations, pulsing with a relentless ache that lingered throughout the day. And the most painful realization was the knowledge that she had been the architect of her own misfortune. It was no mere accident, nor was it something beyond her grasp. She took the reins of decision-making. Initially modest, yet they transformed into a deluge. And now she found herself engulfed by the repercussions. As the sun dipped low on the 4th day, the sound of the key turning in the lock reached her ears. She stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. For a fleeting instant, she contemplated dashing into his arms, confessing her love, and expressing her willingness to do whatever it took to restore their once cherished bond. Yet, an unseen force held her back. Perhaps it was the dread of being turned away, or perhaps it was the weight of embarrassment. Thomas Cross entered the room, taking care to close the door gently behind him. He remained silent. He strolled into the living room, setting his phone down on the table with a deliberate motion. He removed his coat with a deliberate grace, folding it neatly before placing it on the arm of the sofa. It was only at that moment that his gaze found her. Lauren attempted to voice her thoughts, yet found herself choking on the very words she wished to express. She imagined he might begin with inquiries, or maybe launch into a scathing monologue. His silence cut deeper than the harshest of accusations. They positioned themselves across from one another. The moments stretched infinitely, as if time itself had paused in their presence. Thomas Cross paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts, and when he finally spoke, his voice was firm, yet tinged with weariness. He mentioned that he had devoted the past few days to contemplating it all. He delved into memories, faced emotions, and sought to unravel the origins of the disintegration. He revealed that the betrayal had shattered him in an unforeseen manner. Yet, the deepest pain stemmed from the understanding that he had, for an extended period, convinced himself that his relentless toil was in the family's best interest. And yet, he had unwittingly wandered off into the distance. He gazed into her eyes and confessed that love still lingered within him, that a lifetime of emotions could not simply be wiped away in a matter of days. Yet he also disclosed that a transformation had occurred within him. In that moment, it felt as though a fragment of his very soul had perished upon witnessing those haunting images, not merely disappointment, but a shattering of self. A profound sense of humiliation, vulnerability, and abandonment lingers in the air. He admitted to experiencing anger, indeed, yet the true source of his torment lay in the haunting thoughts of what could have transpired had he remained oblivious. Could he have spent the remainder of his days beside a person who deceived him daily? Did the affection he experienced genuinely find its reflection, or was it merely a matter of convenience? He inquired in a calm manner, devoid of any raised voice or gestures, as though he were merely releasing a burden that weighed heavily on his spirit. Lauren wept quietly. She remarked that she was unable to articulate the reasons behind her actions. She experienced a profound sense of being adrift, unseen, and uncertain. She offered her apologies, declaring that it was never love. Colin was merely a means of escape, a grave error, yet undeniably a mistake. She implored for an opportunity to reconstruct, to endeavor to salvage whatever remained of their connection. She expressed her readiness to seek therapy, to transform whatever needed changing, and to relinquish anything that stood in the way of reconciliation. Thomas Cross attuned his ears to the sounds around him. Each and every word. He remained silent. He chose not to engage in a dispute. Upon her completion, he inhaled deeply, ran his hands over his face, and met her gaze once more. He expressed a desire to have faith. In that fleeting moment, he envisioned the possibility of forgiving her, of returning to the familiar rhythm of their lives as if nothing had ever changed. Yet, as he contemplated the notion of lying beside her and feigning normalcy, a weight settled in his chest. He claimed that each morning he would rise with that image etched in his mind. He would attempt to conceal it, to project strength, yet gradually wither away within. He rose with a serene composure. He mentioned that he had to step away for a bit. He was uncertain of the destination that awaited them, yet at this moment, he felt compelled to move forward. He remarked that remaining would merely delay the inevitable suffering. They were worthy of so much more. Lauren attempted to plead for his presence, yet her voice wavered. She observed him as he seized a small backpack, stepped through the door, and departed without a glance behind. She stood there, arms crossed, embracing her own form, as if she could keep intact the fragments that lingered. The ensuing silence was unlike any other. It was far from empty. The decision had been made. There was no turning back. The dwelling had lost its essence as a refuge. It had become a reflection of the remnants of what she once knew as life. Once Thomas Cross departed, the weight of the backpack resting on his shoulders, Lauren remained seated, her gaze locked onto the door he had just exited. Silence enveloped the moment, leaving no words to be spoken. The remnants lingered as the final words echoed, resonating within her with an intensity that felt almost suffocating. Time slipped away. Each passing day, without a word from him, felt like another fragment of their connection was being ripped away. She endeavored to maintain a semblance of dignity. She attended to the fundamentals, prepared the coffee, laundered the forgotten clothes, tidied the house, as though such actions could halt the inevitable descent. Yet within, all lay in shambles. She refrained from venturing outside. She distanced herself from her friends. She refrained from replying to her eldest daughter's messages, which persistently inquired about the situation with her parents. Lauren expressed that they were navigating a challenging period, assuring that resolution was on the horizon. Yet, deep down, she understood the truth eluded her grasp. For although Thomas Cross had not articulated it, she sensed it deeply. She sensed it in the cadence of their final exchange, in the depth of his gaze, in the lingering silence that stretched through each day that followed. His return, nearly a fortnight later, offered no solace. It delivered affirmation. He made his entrance as the afternoon began to wane. He rapped on the door, a gesture that felt foreign, as if the house had slipped from his grasp. With her heart pounding in her throat, Lauren opened it. Before she had the chance to speak, Thomas Cross interjected, stating that he had some loose ends to attend to. He mentioned that he had discovered a short-term residence, a modest apartment close to his workplace. He had conversed with a lawyer and possessed the documents already. She was taken by surprise at how swiftly it unfolded. Despite her acute awareness of all her past actions, a flicker of hope remained within her, whispering of the possibility of renewal. Witnessing Thomas Cross in that moment, discussing the separation with a sense of detachment, as if it were merely a matter of paperwork, struck a deep chord within me. She settled into her seat and allowed herself to simply listen. He conveyed that the lawyer was reliable, assuring that all matters would be handled justly and that she would retain the house along with a portion of the investments. He communicated with a sense of reverence and thoughtfulness, yet there lingered a detachment that stung deeper than any raised voice. Lauren attempted to present her case. She remarked that their past still lingered between them, that assistance could be sought. Perhaps, in the passage of time, that ache will find solace. Yet Thomas Cross remained resolute. He expressed that, for him, persisting would equate to dooming them both to a tepid relationship, upheld by guilt and the futile effort to salvage something that had long since lost its meaning. He wished to hold onto memories of her with warmth, rather than resentment. He chose to depart while affection still lingered, rather than prolong the agony until it morphed into contempt. The ensuing days unfolded in a haze of paperwork. Lauren signed the documents, each stroke of her pen feeling like the release of a chapter from her own story. Every clause resonated with the weight of a complete sentence. Every signature marks a definitive pause. Once the process reached its conclusion, she embarked on an unusual, quiet, and solitary routine. The house brimmed with memories yet stood devoid of gifts. Silence envelopes the night, with no keys rattling in the door, no suitcase resting in the corner of the living room, and no aroma of coffee wafting from the kitchen at dawn. His absence transformed into a presence, a character woven into the very fabric of that house. On a rainy afternoon, as she sifted through drawers long neglected, she stumbled upon a small box containing letters from a bygone era. These were the notes Thomas Cross had penned for their wedding anniversaries, cards preserved from their travels, and even the messages he had left during simpler times, when he would head off to work and affix a "be back soon" note to the fridge. Nestled at the bottom of the box lay an envelope, its surface devoid of any date. It had taken on a yellow hue, a testament to the passage of time. As she unfolded it, a letter emerged, seemingly penned on a mundane day, yet brimming with fervor. Thomas Cross spoke of love, of the trepidation that accompanied the thought of losing her, of how she served as his anchor in the tumultuous sea of life. In that moment, a particular passage sent shivers down her spine. If ever you falter, if anything between us shatters, I cannot fathom how I would respond. I vow to hold dear the memory of the woman who journeyed alongside me through both the joyous moments and the tempestuous times. Lauren perused that sentence multiple times. Each word resonated with an intensity, as though he had foreseen, long ago, that this very moment would arrive. Perhaps it was this realization that led her to finally grasp the truth. Their marriage had come to an end. For the author of that letter was the very individual who, when confronted with suffering, opted against vengeance, against humiliation, against inflicting harm. He decided to depart with grace, clinging to the remnants of his dignity. That decision, above all else, revealed the essence of the man she had once known. Weeks later, the separation was formally recognized. The children found themselves split, taken aback, yet they honored the quietude of their parents. Lauren began to sidestep inquiries. She crafted a more palatable narrative to share with others, one that spared them the harsher truths of reality. Yet deep within, she understood. She understood that she had forfeited far more than just a union. She lost a companion, a sanctuary, and a fragment of her very being. She understood that reclaiming it, if such a thing were ever feasible, would hinge on a lengthy and arduous journey, one that might offer no assurance of success. A month following the formal separation, Lauren found herself on the receiving end of an unexpected call. Thomas Cross was the one. He spoke with a serene demeanor, eschewing any formalities. He mentioned that he was merely passing through and inquired if he might retrieve some old books he had previously left behind. She consented. Upon his arrival, the two exchanged glances, their eyes locking for a few fleeting seconds before the silence was finally broken by words. Without a word, Lauren passed him the books. Yet, just before his departure, she mustered the strength to inquire about his well-being. Thomas Cross agreed. He was making adjustments. There were moments when he found himself stirring in the stillness of the night, yearning to hear her voice, yet the silence lingered on. He expressed that he was in the process of restructuring his inner self. Lauren confessed that thoughts of him lingered in her mind daily. Thomas Cross gazed at her, his eyes serene yet brimming with recollections. He mentioned that she often occupied his thoughts as well. Yet, it was clear that they must now embark on separate journeys. As he prepared to depart, he remarked that he bore no ill will, that he had granted her forgiveness. Yet that forgiveness did not signify a restoration. It was a moment of freedom that at times the most profound expression of love lies in the willingness to set the other person free. And then he departed. With hands that quivered, Lauren shut the door behind her. In that instant, she grasped the profound essence of beginning anew. To embark anew, devoid of certainties, stripped of guarantees, and free from promises. Yet, it was a lesson that would linger in her memory for all time. The anguish of losing someone because of an error is profound. Yet, losing them through deliberate decisions is not a weight to bear. It is a challenge to confront. And she would confront it. Each day unfolds in its own time. Each silence unfolds in its own moment. One regret at a time, until existence carved out a sanctuary for tranquility.